5 bullies, attack disabled secretary in a restaurant. What her billionaire boss does next leaves her speechless and in love. Everyone in the restaurant was laughing at her. A young secretary living with a disability had just dropped her tray, and 5 cruel men decided to humiliate her in front of everyone. But then the door opened, and in walked her billionaire boss. What he did next left the entire place in stunned silence. No one expected the most powerful man in the city to defend her like that, and even she couldn't believe the words that came out of his mouth. Because that day wasn't just about justice, it was the moment that changed both of their lives forever. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. Look at her hands shake. Are you sure she's not serving cocktails at a circus? The man's voice cut through the cafes like broken glass. She'd balanced her own order on a tray, 4 mugs for her team, when the joke cut the air. The tray slipped, 4 ceramic mugs clattered to the floor, shattering in a spray of porcelain and dark roast. 1 cup spun like a coin before collapsing near her footrest. Nora froze. Not from the noise, but from the laughter. The sound always came next. There were 5 of them, all in crisp polos, 2 wearing expensive watches that clinked as they fist-bumped each other. The one who made the joke leaned closer to his friend as if the sight of her trembling hands was just too rich to ignore. Maybe they hired her for pity points, another said, loud enough for the table around them to hear. Nora bent slowly, her long fingers reaching for the pieces. Her breath came shallow. She wasn't afraid of broken glass, just of being seen like this. Her wheelchair, sleek and silver, caught the light like polished metal. The handkerchief tied at her wrist fluttered slightly from the AC. Her fingers, though steady now, pressed the largest ceramic shard into her palm. Anything to keep her focus somewhere else, anywhere else. Then came a 4th voice. "Hey, sweetheart," said the tallest man, his voice dripping mockery. "Did the wheels not come with brakes? You almost ran over that baby behind you." A woman gasped behind her. The baby, several feet away, blinked, unaware. The lie didn't matter. The drama did. The room laughed again, louder. Nora's shoulders didn't slump. She kept them high, back straight, chin up, the way her mother taught her when she was 12 and trying on her first ballet outfit in a wheelchair. But her eyes, they gave her away, blue-green and glassy, brave but bruised. Still on the floor, she began gathering the broken mugs into her tray. Her white sneaker pressed the edge of the tray to hold it steady. Her fingers moved quietly, quickly, efficient, dignified. She refused to cry in front of them. And then the door opened, and everything stopped. Wind swept in, ruffling papers and lifting a strand of her hair across her cheek. Even before she looked up, she felt it, a shift in the room. Like gravity moved sideways for just a second. A voice spoke from the doorway, calm, low, controlled like silk wrapped around steel. "Gentlemen, is this how you treat women in public? Or just the ones who make you feel small?" Nora's head turned, slowly, and there he was, Lucas Hale, her boss, her billionaire boss. The man whose company logo was etched on half the skyline downtown. He wasn't supposed to be here. He didn't do drop-ins. He had assistants for that, 3 to be exact. But he was here, in person. Hands at his sides, jaw set, eyes cutting through the room. For a beat, nobody moved. Even the espresso machine stopped hissing. Lucas stepped forward. His polished shoes missed the glass shards by inches. Then, quietly, he knelt beside her. Nora blinked. "I'll take that," he said softly, picking up the tray from under her sneaker. He examined a cracked mug in his hand. "It's just a cup. They break." He turned his gaze to her. "People don't." That's when her breath caught. She hadn't realized she'd been holding it. Lucas stood again, now holding the tray effortlessly. His navy blazer caught the light, the top button of his white shirt undone like he'd walked out of a magazine. But there was nothing posed about him. His presence wasn't about looks. It was gravity. Command. He turned to the men, still frozen in their seats. "You can leave," he said, with a voice that didn't need to rise to be heard. "Now, listen, we didn't mean—" "I said now." The tallest man rose, clearing his throat, trying to act amused. "We didn't know she worked for you, Mr. Hale." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "She works with me. You'll remember that." And just like that, they left. Murmurs filled the cafe. The tension evaporated like steam. Somewhere, someone started clapping. But it died out awkwardly. The silence that followed was softer, warmer. Lucas turned back to her. "Are you hurt?" Nora shook her head. Her voice finally returned, but came out small. "I'm fine." He looked unconvinced. "Let me get you a seat, a real one. No customers. Just us." And before she could answer, he gently placed the tray on the counter. The barista nodded and waved them through to the staff break room behind the register. Lucas guided her inside. Inside, the space was quiet. Fridge, microwave, 2 chairs. A round table with a tiny vase holding one tired daisy. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and floor cleaner. He pulled out a chair for himself. She rolled in beside him. Then, the moment she hadn't expected, he poured her a cup of fresh coffee. Black, no sugar, just how she always ordered it at the office. She never thought he noticed. She stared at the mug for a second before accepting it. Her fingers brushed his. A pause, just long enough for something to shift. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice steadier now. Lucas tilted his head. "Do what?" "Protect me. I'm used to— it's not the first time people stared. Then maybe it should be the last." He wasn't smiling. Not exactly. But his eyes had softened. Steel blue gone silver in the dim light. He looked at her differently now, not like a boss, not like a hero, like a man who saw her. She glanced down, fidgeting with the thin silver bracelet on her wrist. Her thumb traced the tiny engraving, a swirl of initials too faded to read now. It had been her mother's. After hers was lost at the hospital, Nora wore a matching one she'd found. A stand-in, a promise. Lucas noticed. "That bracelet," he said quietly. "You touch it when you're nervous." Nora looked up, startled. "You've seen me do that before," he nodded once. "Plenty." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever looked that closely, and for a moment the air felt different, heavier, but not in a bad way, like something important was about to happen. But just before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from someone she hadn't heard from in 5 years. "I saw you on that cafe video. Call me, please." Nora's breath caught in her throat. The screen faded to black as Nora's phone dimmed in her lap. Her fingers hovered over it, motionless, eyes unfocused. Jay. She hadn't said that name out loud in 5 years, hadn't let herself even think about it. The fact that he, of all people, had seen the video meant only one thing. Someone had filmed the moment she dropped that tray. And now, it was out there. Her humiliation wasn't just witnessed, it was shared. Across the table, Lucas watched her, quietly, respectfully, not pressing. But his eyes, they saw too much. "Everything okay?" His voice was low, careful. Nora tucked the phone away slowly. She offered a tight smile. "Fine." He didn't believe her. She knew that. But he didn't push. Instead, he reached into a paper bag he'd brought in. She hadn't noticed it before, and pulled out 2 sandwiches wrapped in brown paper. He slid one toward her. "I didn't know what you liked, so I picked turkey and apple. It's mine, but I figured we could split." Nora blinked. That was unexpected. The world's most unapproachable CEO, offering to share his sandwich like a picnic lunch? In a break room that still smelled faintly of bleach? Her lips twitched. "That's oddly specific," she said, carefully peeling back the wrapper. "Apple?" Lucas shrugged. "Don't knock it till you try it." They sat in silence for a minute, each taking a bite. To her surprise, it was good, sweet and savory, a bit messy, and not what you'd expect in a billion-dollar boardroom. Nora leaned back slightly in her chair, her nerves slowly calming. The bracelet on her wrist glinted in the light, catching Lucas's eye again. "I meant what I said out there," he said after a pause. She swallowed, glancing up. "You work with me," he repeated. "Not for me. Anyone who can make this company run smoother with half the tools the rest of us get, and do it without ever asking for special treatment, deserves more than respect. They deserve a seat at the table." It wasn't a compliment. It was a declaration, a truth he believed. Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to that. Most people thought kindness meant pity. This felt different. "You don't have to say all that," she murmured. "I didn't have to show up today either," he replied. His voice gentle but firm. Silence fell again, but it wasn't uncomfortable now. "Why were you even there?" she asked finally. "That cafe isn't near your office." Lucas took another bite of sandwich, chewed thoughtfully, then said, "I wasn't going for coffee. I was going for you." Nora's eyes widened. Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "There's a position opening, Senior Operations Liaison. I was coming to offer it to you in person. You've more than earned it." Her heart skipped. "That role is usually based in the London office." He nodded. "It is." "You were going to ask me to move countries?" "I was going to ask you if you wanted to." Nora stared at him. This man, who only ever emailed brief instructions, who moved through boardrooms like a hurricane in a tailored suit, was now offering her more than a job. He was offering her the one thing no one had ever offered, a choice. And then her phone buzzed again, another message. "Please, Nora, I messed up. But I need to see you, just once." Jonas. He had the nerve to spell out his name this time. Lucas noticed her shift. "Do you need to take that?" "No," she said quickly, then hesitated. "Maybe." Her voice was soft, tired. Lucas reached for his coffee, his expression unreadable now. "Is it someone important?" Nora hesitated, then nodded once. "Used to be." A silence fell. But this time it crackled. Something unspoken lingered between them, just beyond reach. She didn't want to say it, didn't want to give Jonas power over this moment, but it was already cracking her wide open from the inside out. "He was a part of my life," she began slowly. "A long time ago, before the accident." Lucas stilled. Nora didn't look at him. "He left the second things got hard. When I needed help learning how to live like this." She motioned briefly to her chair. "He said he couldn't do it, that it would ruin his chances, his image. He disappeared." The bracelet shimmered as her wrist moved. Her thumb found the edge again. Lucas said nothing, but the air in the room shifted. Not pity. No soft, broken gaze. Just a quiet fury on her behalf. The kind that didn't need to shout. "You deserve better," he said after a long pause. "Better friends, better men, better stories." The words settled deep into her chest. She looked at him then, really looked. And for the first time, she saw the truth behind his polished armor. Lucas Hale wasn't just powerful. He was lonely, too. Someone who understood betrayal in his own way. A man who'd built an empire, but still showed up with a sandwich and dignity for someone others laughed at. "I should head back," she said softly, not wanting to. Lucas stood. He opened the door for her, waiting as she wheeled forward. Then, just as they reached the cafe again, a man was waiting by the front counter. Tall, clean-cut, nervous energy radiating off him, and Nora's blood ran cold. Jonas. He didn't see her at first, just Lucas. Then his eyes found her, and widened. "Nora, I saw the video. I came as soon as I could." Lucas's body shifted slightly in front of her, not blocking her view, but shielding it. And Nora? She didn't look down, didn't hide. Not this time. She drew a slow breath, her back straight. "Why now?" "Jonas?" she asked, voice steady. "Why after 5 years of silence?" He blinked, words fumbled. "Because I made a mistake." Lucas didn't speak. Neither did the rest of the cafe. All eyes were on her, and for the first time she held the power in the silence. But just as Jonas opened his mouth again, the cafe door opened once more. This time it was a woman, elegant, impeccable, designer heels clicking on the tile. She walked straight to Lucas, wrapped her arm around his, and kissed his cheek like she owned him. "Nora," she said with a smile colder than marble, "I'm Camille, Lucas's fiancée." Camille's lipstick didn't smudge as she kissed Lucas's cheek, as if she'd rehearsed this entrance 1,000 times. She looked like a magazine cover come to life, sleek dark hair in a twisted knot, white cashmere coat draped over her shoulders, and that kind of glow money can buy, skin so polished it barely moved. Nora didn't blink, not because she wasn't shocked, but because she refused to give Camille that. Lucas, however, stiffened. "Camille," he said, his voice clipped. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, darling," she cooed, ignoring the ice in his tone. "I was in the area and saw the video. Thought you might be embarrassed, or maybe in need of a little damage control." Her eyes flicked to Nora and lingered. A smile curled slowly at the corners of her mouth. "I'm sure she's fine," Camille said in a tone that suggested the opposite. "Poor thing. These viral things don't last. People forget." Lucas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he looked at Nora, and that simple action, turning away from Camille to meet her eyes, said more than any words. Nora met his gaze. She didn't need to win. She just needed to keep her dignity. So she adjusted her posture, rolled forward slightly, and offered Camille the kind of smile you save for people who think they have the upper hand. "I'm sure you meant well," she said softly, "but I don't need you to feel sorry for me." Camille blinked. Nora's voice didn't waver. "What happened earlier wasn't about me being in a wheelchair, it was about cruelty. You don't need legs to stand up to that." A murmur stirred near the barista counter. The people who had laughed earlier were watching again, but differently now. A few looked away. Ashamed. Even Jonas, still hovering behind, seemed taken aback. Camille tilted her head, that smile cracking for just a second. "Well, you've certainly grown a spine." Nora's fingers brushed her bracelet beneath the cuff of her blazer. She didn't answer the insult. She didn't need to, because Lucas did. "She's right," he said, his voice low and firm. "And if anyone here should be embarrassed, it's not her." Camille opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. Lucas turned to Nora, gently placing a hand near the back of her chair, not possessive, just present. "Do you want to leave?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "Please." And just like that, he escorted her out, past Camille, who stood frozen in her expensive shoes, and past Jonas, who now looked like a man who'd missed his only train. They walked, or rolled in her case, 3 blocks in silence. The wind had picked up rustling leaves along the sidewalk. Street lights flickered on, casting a soft gold hue over the city. They stopped at a small coffee stall, tucked into a corner near a park. It wasn't fancy. The sign was crooked, and the man behind the counter wore mismatched gloves, but it smelled like cinnamon and nutmeg. Lucas ordered 2 hot chocolates without asking. No small talk, just the kind of silence that holds its own weight. He handed her the paper cup carefully, as if it were made of glass. "Thank you," she said, meaning it more than she knew how to say. Lucas stared at his own cup for a moment before speaking. "Camille isn't my fiancée," Nora blinked. "Nora?" She says a lot of things," he said. "She was years ago. She still uses the word when it suits a headline. We got engaged because of pressure, timing, expectations. all the wrong reasons, and when I started pulling away, she never really let go. Nora listened, sipping the cocoa. The warmth settled in her chest. Softening edges she didn't know were sharp. She works with the board, he added, still tries to act like it's the Lucas and Camille show, especially at charity events. And you let her? His gaze met hers. Not anymore. They stood there for a moment in the hush between streetlight flickers. You didn't owe me that explanation, Nora said quietly. I did, Lucas replied, because for some reason, I care what you think of me. The air shifted. She lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening around the warm cup. The bracelet peeked out again from beneath her sleeve. I didn't think anyone ever would, she said, almost to herself. Lucas stepped closer. Then, they were fools, he said, all of them. Nora looked up. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat the city fell away. Then, his phone buzzed. Lucas ignored it, but Nora's didn't. Another message. From Jonas. Please, meet me, just once, I need to explain. Tonight, your call. She didn't know what to do. Lucas saw her hesitate. Is that him? He asked. Nora didn't answer right away, then nodded. Lucas studied her face. Do you want to see him? I don't know. He didn't push, just nodded. Then he did something she didn't expect. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Thin, worn at the edges. I was going to give this to my assistant, he said, as a promotion gift, but she never came back after her wedding, so I kept it. He placed it in her hand. Inside was a brooch, delicate, silver, in the shape of a bird in flight, wings stretched, unbound. Nora gasped softly. It looked so much like the carving on her bracelet, a tiny dove. Worn by time. She looked up at him, speechless. I don't know why I brought it, he said. Maybe. It was meant for someone who's actually learned how to fly. Her eyes welled, and just as she opened her mouth, Jonas stepped out from the shadows across the street. He'd been watching them the whole time. Nora, he called. Lucas turned slowly. And Nora? She closed her fingers around the brooch. Her choice wasn't made yet, but something inside her had shifted. She was no longer the girl who was left. Now, she was the woman who got to decide who stayed. The air between them crackled with something unsaid, something unfinished. Jonas stood across the street, one hand in his jacket pocket, the other stiff at his side. He looked older than she remembered, and somehow smaller too, like the weight of his choices had finally caught up to him. Nora, he called again, more cautious this time. Can we talk? Lucas didn't move. His hand was still in his coat pocket, his shoulders square, protective without being possessive. He looked at Nora and gave her a choice. No words, just a glance that asked, Do you want me to stay? She nodded. They crossed the street together, slowly, her wheelchair wheels silent over the pavement. Jonas's eyes flicked between them. He took a step forward, then seemed to think better of it. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I didn't, Nora replied. You did. Jonas flinched, like he hadn't expected her voice to carry so much strength, or maybe so much calm. He looked at Lucas again, this time with a flicker of discomfort. Do we really need an audience? If you want to talk to her, Lucas said, his tone quiet but sharp, you talk to her, not at her, and not like she owes you silence. Jonas bristled. Nora placed a hand lightly over Lucas's wrist, not to stop him, but to ground herself. It's okay, she said. I want to hear what he came to say. Just not here. She motioned toward a nearby diner, the kind with red booths and windows fogged from the fryer. A place that didn't pretend to be anything more than it was. That felt right. Jonas opened the door for her. Lucas stayed outside. Nora rolled inside first and chose the corner booth. Jonas sat across from her, awkwardly folding his hands on the table. A waitress came by, dropped 2 laminated menus, and left them with a raised brow. She'd seen that kind of conversation before. Neither of them touched the menus. Jonas cleared his throat. I watched that video twice. Good for you. He winced. I deserved that. Nora said nothing. Her hands found the edge of the table, steady. I didn't leave because of your accident, he began quickly. I left because I was scared. That is the reason, she said, calm but cutting. Jonas flinched again. Nora leaned back slightly. You disappeared. You didn't even visit the hospital. My mom had to pack my things and tell people you'd moved. We didn't even get closure. I know, he said, eyes glassy. I hated myself for it. Still do. Then why now? Her voice was soft, but steel beneath it. Why come back 5 years later? After a video goes viral? Jonas ran a hand through his hair. Because I saw you, and it hit me. I'd let go of the best thing I ever had. I want a second chance. Silence. Then Nora spoke, slow, measured. I loved you, Jonas. You were my first everything. But when I changed, you didn't adapt. You disappeared, and now you think you can step back in like no time passed? I've changed, he said. Leaning forward, I swear. I've done therapy. I've learned. I want to make it right. Nora's hand drifted to her bracelet. Her thumb traced the little bird. She thought of the new brooch Lucas gave her, the matching silver bird in flight, still in her coat pocket. Did you come to make peace? She asked. Or did you come to reclaim something you lost? Jonas hesitated. That half-second was enough. You don't love me, she said. You love the girl I used to be, the one who depended on you to carry her books and open jars. But that's not who I am anymore. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I don't want pity, she added, not from strangers in a cafe, and definitely not from the man who walked away. A pause. Then the waitress returned, dropping 2 mugs of coffee, neither of them ordered. One black, one with cream, as if the universe remembered old habits they'd forgotten. Jonas reached for his. Nora didn't. I hope you really have changed, she said, but this version of me? She doesn't wait at the same table anymore. And with that she wheeled away. Chin high, heart pounding. Lucas was outside, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the street, not checking on her but waiting for her. She stopped in front of him. All done? He asked gently. She nodded. He held out a thermos. Got you a proper cocoa from the stall. The one in there looked like old engine oil. She smiled despite herself. How long were you standing out here? Long enough to know you didn't need me in there. Thank you for giving me the space. Lucas's eyes searched hers. He said, anything worth holding on to? She took the thermos, cradled it in both hands, and said softly, only that I've let go. They stood there for a moment, quiet. Then he spoke. You told him you've changed, but I don't think you've changed at all. She raised an eyebrow. No? He shook his head. I think you've always been this strong. Maybe the world's just catching up. Her cheeks flushed, not from the cold, and then with the softest voice she'd used all day, she asked, what do you see when you look at me? Lucas blinked, like he hadn't expected the question, then stepped just a little closer. I see a woman who's already 10 steps ahead of everyone in the room, he said, and still graceful enough to make them feel like they're the ones leading. Nora's breath caught, and then a moment, so small it could be missed. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a quiet, deliberate touch, not a rescue, not a show, just him, seeing her. Before either of them could speak, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. Everything okay? She asked. Lucas hesitated, then turned the screen toward her, an email. Subject line, urgent, press demands comment on Lucas Hale seen defending disabled employee. Camille has already responded. Nora's heart dropped. Responded how? Lucas's jaw clenched. We're about to find out. The email was short and cruel. Lucas Hale confirms his disabled employee's value goes beyond mobility. But sources suggest deeper entanglement between the billionaire and his secretary. Fiancée Camille Evers responds, I only hope this wasn't a charity project. Nora stared at the screen. The words blurred, but not from tears. Lucas looked as if someone had punched him. His shoulders tightened, his mouth pressed into a line. "She used the word charity," he said through gritted teeth. Nora nodded slowly. She did. He tapped the screen again. Scrolling. Camille's statement had been picked up by 3 national gossip sites, and one morning show teaser, Lucas Hale, boss, billionaire, or benefactor. A photo sat beneath it. The photo. Nora's tray on the ground, the coffee spilled across the tile, her hand trembling, and behind her, Lucas kneeling, holding the broken mug, looking at her like she mattered. That moment, so private, so hard-won, had been turned into clickbait. "We need to issue a formal statement," Lucas said, already pulling out his phone. "I'll call the legal team. They'll crush it." Nora stayed still. He paused, looked up, looked. But she wasn't crying or panicking. She was quiet. "I appreciate you protecting me," she said, voice steady. "But this isn't something you can fix with a team." Lucas hesitated. "I've lived a long time knowing people would stare," she went on. "But this time, they're not just staring at the chair. They're questioning why someone like you would even sit at the same table as me." He didn't speak, just listened, really listened. "I won't hide," she said finally. "If they're going to talk, let them talk to me, not about me." Lucas blinked. "You want to speak publicly?" "I want to speak truthfully." He studied her for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. "I'll back you, whatever you say, however you say it." The next morning, Nora rolled into the company lobby. It was early, quiet, but eyes were already watching. The receptionist paused mid-typing. 2 junior analysts whispered behind a potted plant. Someone actually pointed. Nora wore her simple light blue dress and her gray blazer, same as always. But something had shifted. Her posture, her stillness, or maybe the way her bracelet caught the light with every turn of her wrist, like a flag planted in her own name. She reached the elevators and pressed the button. Doors slid open. Camille was inside, alone. Of course, she looked Nora up and down. Her smile was glossy and vicious. "Well, this is awkward," she said. Nora wheeled in without flinching, pressed the button for floor 29. Camille turned toward her. "I assumed you'd resign." Nora didn't respond. Camille leaned closer. "You know the press thinks you're sleeping with him, right? That this was all some tragic Cinderella charity stunt? That little bracelet you keep wearing? Almost cute. Almost." Nora's fingers curled around her lap. But then she reached into her pocket, pulled out the silver bird brooch Lucas had given her. She pinned it to her blazer, slowly, deliberately. "Funny thing about Cinderella," Nora said, voice calm. "She didn't stay hidden forever, and the glass slippers weren't about charity. They were proof she'd been underestimated." The elevator chimed. Nora wheeled out, without another glance back. Lucas's office was brighter than usual. Sunlight poured through the windows. The skyline looked golden, almost soft. He was already waiting by the seating area, not behind his desk. She noticed. "You ready?" he asked gently. "I was born ready," she said, surprising herself. He handed her a warm drink. Not coffee this time, but tea, chamomile with honey, calming. "You remembered," she murmured. "I pay attention." A camera crew arrived, 1 woman, 1 mic, 1 light. It was a company video, not a media circus, just a simple, clear message to employees and the press. Nora insisted, no makeup crew. No teleprompter. She wanted them to see her, just her. The woman hit record. Nora looked straight into the lens. "My name is Nora Bennett. I'm a secretary at Hale & Co. And yes, I use a wheelchair. I have since I was 19. That doesn't make me less capable. It doesn't make me fragile. And it definitely doesn't mean I was chosen out of pity." She paused. Let the silence land. "I've worked in this company for 4 years. I've organized international projects, budgeted $10 million portfolios, and negotiated vendor contracts faster than most lawyers. My disability doesn't define me, but how you respond to it, that might define you. Off camera? Lucas exhaled softly. I wasn't the one embarrassed in that cafe, Nora added. I stood back up, and I'll keep doing it, with or without the chair. The video ended. No music, no filter, just her. Real. 3 hours later, it had already been shared 1.2 million times. Comments flooded in. Her voice? Her presence. I've never felt so seen. I showed this to my daughter. Thank you, Nora. That brooch, that bracelet, that woman. And beneath all that, a new email. From the board chairwoman. Subject, lunch? Nora, we've been watching the press response. You've held yourself with dignity under pressure. That's leadership. Would you be free to join me for lunch tomorrow? Agatha Lynn, board chair. Nora stared at the screen. Lucas leaned over her shoulder, reading too. Looks like someone else noticed, he murmured. But Nora didn't reply, because her phone buzzed again, this time from her estranged father. Saw you on the news. Your mother would have cried. I know I don't deserve a seat in your life, but if there's room for coffee, I'd like to try. Nora's throat tightened. This wasn't just about Camille anymore. It wasn't even about Lucas. It was about her, finding her voice, and maybe her past too. Nora sat at the far window of Harper's Coffee and Pie, the kind of place that hadn't changed since the 80s. Mismatched mugs, faded photographs on the walls, and a menu board written in chalk. The booths were worn, the waitress wore orthopedic shoes, and every slice of pie came with a choice. Whipped cream or melted ice cream, she'd chosen neither, just coffee, black. The cup sat untouched. Outside the sky was gray. Inside her chest, a quiet storm built. She touched her silver bracelet with her thumb, the metal cool and familiar. For years it had been her shield, a quiet reminder of her mother's voice, whispering, "Some people leave, but you, darling, you stay true." The door jingled, and in he walked, her father. Walt Bennett looked exactly like he did the day he left, just a little older, thinner, less hair, but the eyes were still the same, hazel, tired, full of guilt he never knew how to say aloud. He wore a brown jacket too big for him and held his cap in his hands like it might bite. He spotted her instantly and froze, just for a second, before walking over. "Nora," he said. She didn't smile. He slid into the booth across from her and exhaled. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "Neither did I," she said softly. The waitress came. "Refill, honey?" Nora nodded. Her father pointed at the pie menu. "Do you still like banana cream?" She blinked. "I haven't had it in 10 years. He paused. "I brought you one once, after that school recital, remember?" "I remember the recital," she said. "Not the pie." He nodded. Taking the blow like a man used to losing. "I saw the video," he said after a moment, "and then I saw the speech. Your voice." He shook his head. "It was your mother's voice. That strength, that kindness. She'd be proud." Nora looked out the window. "She would have been proud if you'd stayed too." The silence between them wasn't cruel. It was just old, like a bruise that no longer hurt to press but never quite faded. "I was broken after she passed," he said, "and I didn't know how to love you the way she did." "You didn't need to love me the same way," she replied. "You just needed to stay." He swallowed hard. "I know." The waitress dropped off 2 slices of banana cream pie, unrequested. One for each of them. Nora stared at hers. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you." Her father nodded. "Then maybe just start with pie." A long pause. Then she picked up her fork. It was a small bite, but it was something. Later that evening, she sat alone on the rooftop garden of her building, the wind tugging gently at her blazer. The brooch Lucas gave her was pinned firmly at her collar, its silver wings glinting under the moonlight. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. I brought backup. Nora turned. Lucas was there, holding 2 paper bags. You didn't show up for dinner, he said. So I assumed emotional exhaustion or unspeakable banana pie trauma. Her lips curved. How did you know? He handed her a bag. Inside, Thai noodles, her favorite, still warm. They sat together on the bench, legs stretched out. His, obviously. I met my dad today, she said after a few bites. Lucas didn't look surprised. How was it? Hard, honest, quiet. He nodded. Some silences say more than shouting ever could. She took another bite. Slower this time. I didn't forgive him, but I didn't leave. Lucas looked at her. That's more than most people do. They sat in silence for a while. Then she turned to him. Why are you so good at this? At what? Showing up, listening, knowing exactly what kind of noodles someone needs after seeing their estranged father. Lucas chuckled, eyes crinkling at the corners. I used to be terrible at it, still am most days. I just care, and I don't always know where to put it. She looked at him then, really looked. The skyline glowed behind him, the city pulsed below, but he was the brightest thing in her world at that moment. I don't think you're terrible at it, she whispered. He met her gaze. For a moment, something passed between them. Not heat, not pressure, but possibility. And then he said, there's a gala this weekend, not business, not board, not press. She raised an eyebrow. So what is it? He hesitated. It's mine. I host it every year, quietly, for the foundation my mom started. Education grants for kids with mobility challenges. Her eyes softened. I never ask guests to come as anything other than themselves, he added, but I'd like you there, with me. She didn't answer right away. Then, I'll think about it, he smiled. That's all I wanted. They sat in silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was brimming with everything that hadn't been said yet. And just as they packed up the empty bags, Nora's phone buzzed again. This time, a new threat. From Camille Evers. Subject, you should see this before it airs. Attached, a private video file, labeled Lucas Hale, voicemail to Nora, week after accident, MP4. Nora's hands went cold. What is it? Lucas asked, but she was already opening it. And what she heard changed everything. Nora sat on the edge of her bed, the light from her phone screen casting shadows across her face. The video was simple. No effects, no music, just a voicemail file, paired with a still frame of Lucas sitting in what looked like his office. Younger, less composed, the top button of his shirt done for once. His hair was shorter, his voice not steady. She hit play. Hi, Nora, you won't get this. I know that, but I had to say it somewhere. He exhaled hard. It's been a week since the accident. I heard from HR today. They said you'll need extended medical leave. I can't stop thinking about that day in the parking lot. About what I should have said when you showed me the brochure, the dance academy in Paris. Nora's breath caught. She remembered that moment. Clear as sunlight. 1 week before the accident, she'd handed Lucas a folded brochure with trembling hands and a smile so wide it hurt. The wheelchair ballet scholarship. He'd barely glanced at it. Said they'd discuss it later. Later never came. I didn't believe you'd leave, Lucas's voice said in the video. You were this constant. My calm in the middle of the storm. I took you for granted. And when I got that call, I thought, please, let her walk again, just long enough to walk away from me. Her hand flew to her bracelet. Her thumb traced the bird. If you come back, I'll be better. I'll see you this time. Not the assistant, not the wheelchair, you, Nora. The message ended. No goodbye, just silence. Her screen dimmed, and the silence in her room was deafening. Lucas was waiting downstairs. She hadn't texted back since the night before. When he saw her wheeling down the front ramp of her building, his face lit, just slightly. But one look at her expression, and the warmth faded. Nora? I saw the video, she said, straight to the point. He nodded once, lips tightening. I didn't know Camille had it. She said it was a voicemail, but it had video. She asked my assistant for access to old files, said it was for a charity montage. I never questioned it. I'd forgotten I even recorded it. Nora crossed her arms. You never sent it. I didn't know how. She held his gaze. I thought I was just a secretary to you back then, she said, one you didn't even trust with her own future. You were more than that, he said instantly. But I didn't say it. I didn't show it. And I've regretted that for 5 years. Silence. Then, softly, you knew I wanted to dance again. I did, he admitted, but I was selfish. I didn't want to lose you. And I didn't believe I had the right to want you to stay. Her jaw tightened. You didn't. Not back then. Lucas stepped closer. But do I now? Nora's heart thundered. Her hands rested on the wheels of her chair, not moving, just holding still. I don't know, she said honestly, because the woman you're asking that question to isn't the same one who handed you that brochure. She doesn't ask for permission to fly anymore. Lucas nodded. Slowly, respectfully, then quietly, then let me walk beside you this time, not ahead, not behind, beside. Something cracked inside her, not pain, not fear, hope. They walked in silence, her wheels rolling over fallen leaves, his footsteps matching her rhythm. They ended up on a quiet side street. Outside a little diner she used to visit with her mom. The owner, Mrs. Diaz, recognized her instantly. "Hi, Nina, look at you, all grown and famous. Sit, sit. I'll bring you the pie." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Famous?" Nora chuckled. "I once won their banana pie eating contest. I was 12 and 2 slices ahead of a boy twice my size." Lucas smirked. "I would pay good money to see that." She tilted her head. "You wouldn't last 2 bites?" "Oh, is that a challenge?" Mrs. Diaz dropped off a slice of pie big enough to block sunlight. Lucas stared. "What is that?" Nora grinned. "Victory." As he took a cautious bite, she softened. "I didn't know you recorded that message," she said gently. "But it mattered. Hearing it now?" "It closed something." Lucas looked at her. "Closed or opened?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and held up the silver bird brooch. "You said you didn't know why you brought this to the office." "I didn't," he said. She pinned it to her blazer again, right over her heart. "Well, maybe I do now." He watched her, and something passed between them. Not just attraction, not even romance. Recognition, the kind that says, "You see me, the real me, and I don't have to shrink." Then, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Nora's did too. She glanced. An email. Subject: tonight's gala has been leaked. From Agatha Lynn, board chair. Camille's media contacts have RSVP'd. They're calling it the Cinderella Reunion. Please advise how you'd like to proceed. Also, Lucas, the board is asking if Nora is attending as your guest or your date. Nora read the last line twice. Lucas looked at her. Nora. She raised her gaze. He stepped closer. "That's not how I wanted to ask," she swallowed. "Then ask." He drew a breath. "Will you come with me tonight?" he asked softly. Not for them, not for the board, not for Camille. She waited. Then he added, "For me." The dress was simple. That was the first thing Nora decided. No sequins, no sweeping ball gown. Just a deep sapphire blue satin dress that fell gently over her knees, tailored to her seated posture. Clean lines, elegant neckline, dignified, not trying to dazzle, just owning space. She looked at herself in the mirror of her small apartment bathroom. The light was too bright, the tiles too cold, but something about the woman in the reflection stopped her. Not because she looked perfect, but because for the first time in years, she looked like herself. She tied her hair back into a loose bun, let a few strands fall around her face. Then, gently, she clipped the silver brooch at her collarbone. The dove's wings caught the light, a soft, quiet symbol of everything she'd reclaimed. On her wrist, as always, sat the bracelet, worn, familiar, irreplaceable. A knock at her door pulled her from the moment. Lucas stood there in a crisp black suit and charcoal tie. No pocket square, no flash. His gaze caught on her instantly, and he said nothing for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than usual. "Hi," she smiled. "Hi." His eyes softened. "You look," she waited, "real and more than enough." Her breath caught, and something settled in her chest. The ride to the gala was quiet, but not heavy. They shared one pair of earbuds, Nora's playlist, old jazz and soft indie songs that told more truth than most people managed in a lifetime. Lucas didn't ask questions, just listened. When they pulled up to the venue, the grand glass and gold hall overlooking the river, Nora froze for a second. Cameras, far more than expected. Lucas followed her gaze. "I can turn this around. We don't have to walk the carpet." She straightened her shoulders. "No. Let them see." He nodded once and offered his arm. She didn't take it. Instead, she rolled forward on her own, slow, smooth, confident. The cameras clicked. Flashes exploded, and just like that, Nora Bennett became the story. Some stared, some whispered, some blinked, surprised. But one little girl, standing behind the rope line in a small pink wheelchair, gasped out loud and waved so hard her bow fell off. Nora turned and smiled at her, waved back. The little girl's mother mouthed, "Thank you." And that was the moment Nora stopped shaking. Lucas followed her down the carpet, a step behind, not guiding, just supporting, letting the world see what he saw. When a reporter pushed a mic in her face, "Are you Lucas Hale's date tonight or part of the charity display?" Nora paused and smiled. "I'm the voice you thought wouldn't speak." A pause. Then the woman next to the reporter whispered, "That's her. That's the girl from the video. The speech one." The question stopped. The cameras kept clicking, and Lucas, he just looked at her like she was the only light in the room. Inside, the gala pulsed with soft jazz, warm lights, and sharp glances from society's elite. Crystal chandeliers, floor-length gowns, and in the center of it all, a quiet woman in a blue dress, seated with grace, making people reevaluate everything they thought they knew about poise. Camille arrived 30 minutes late. Wearing white, of course. She approached their table with a practiced smile. "Well, the media certainly noticed you." Nora didn't look up from her wine. "Good." Lucas, without turning, said, "Camille, this isn't your moment." "Oh, but it might be," she purred. "They're asking who she is to you." "Date? Charity pick? Or something a little closer?" Lucas turned then. "Nora is the woman I admire most in this room," he said calmly, "and the only person here whose opinion of me actually matters." Camille blinked, but before she could answer, the band began to play. The opening notes of an old swing ballad filled the air. Lucas leaned toward Nora. "Dance with me." Her brow rose. "You know, I can't." "I said dance," he murmured, "not spin." He extended his hand, and she took it. He walked beside her to the center of the floor, the crowd parting slowly, uncertainly. At first it was awkward, a few unsure twirls, a soft laugh, and then they found a rhythm. Nora moved in slow circles, her chair gliding effortlessly as Lucas matched her pace, one hand on her back, the other just touching her fingers. And in that moment, they weren't the headline, they weren't the scandal. They were just two people, sharing something rare. When the music faded, they stood and sat in silence. Lucas leaned in, just close enough for her to hear over the applause. "I meant what I said." She looked up. "I've spent my whole life building things," he continued, "but you're the first person who made me want to build something with." Nora's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Then Lucas asked, barely a whisper, "Is there space for me in your story?" And just before she could answer, someone behind them cleared their throat, a familiar voice. "I hope I'm not interrupting." They turned. It was Jonas, wearing a server's vest, holding a tray, and a new truth about to drop. "Schuldpartium." Jonas stood frozen, tray in hand. The way someone looks when they've stepped into a room they no longer have the right to enter. A last-minute caterer badge hung crooked from his vest. Camille's doing. Nora blinked at him, not because she was surprised he was there, but because he looked ashamed. Not performative, not dramatic, just real. Like the last layer of ego had finally peeled away, Lucas took a single step forward, instinctively putting himself slightly in front of Nora. "Jonas," he said carefully, "why are you here?" Jonas glanced around, eyes on them, phones in hands, people already whispering. But none dared interrupt. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said. "I came because I was hired." Nora frowned. "By who?" Jonas glanced sideways. "Technically? Camille?" Lucas's jaw clenched. "Of course. She offered to put me on staff as a last-minute caterer, said they were short." "And you said yes?" Lucas asked coldly. Jonas looked at Nora. "I said yes because I had something I needed to give her, something I should have given her 5 years ago." He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a small velvet pouch, identical to the one that once held the silver bird brooch. Nora took it slowly, hesitantly, opened it. Inside, the original bracelet, her mother's actual bracelet, the one she'd lost during recovery. Her eyes widened. "Where did you get this?" Jonas swallowed hard. "It fell off your wrist when you were transferred. I kept it. I thought I'd return it sooner, but the longer I waited, the harder it became," she finished. He nodded. Lucas watched in silence. Nora held the bracelet gently. It was heavier than she remembered, worn, warmer. It still had that tiny scratch on the clasp from when she was 7 and tried to pry it open with a spoon. She looked up at Jonas. "You should have returned this the week you left." "I know. I mourned this," she whispered. "Not because of the medal, but because it was the only thing my mother wore when she danced." Jonas looked down. "I'm sorry." Lucas stepped back, letting them have the space. But Jonas wasn't done. He turned to Lucas. "You didn't tell her, did you?" Lucas stilled. "Tell her what?" Jonas looked back at Nora. "That we knew each other." Nora's eyes darted between them. "What?" Lucas looked not angry, not scared, just tired. Jonas filled the silence. "We were roommates years ago, before either of us had careers, before he started Hale & Co." Lucas rubbed his temple. "Jonas?" "No, she deserves to know. I was at the hospital the day of her accident. I saw the report come in. I knew it was her, but I didn't call. I didn't visit. I couldn't face it. So I came to you." Nora froze. Lucas's voice was low. "You asked me to keep it quiet, and you agreed. I agreed because you begged." Nora's voice cut through the tension like cold wind. "You've both known this?" "All these years?" Jonas shifted. "It wasn't like that." Lucas turned to her. "I didn't want to hurt you with a betrayal that was already behind you." "But it wasn't behind me," she said quietly. "I was still holding it." The room had gone silent around them. The music in the ballroom swelled as if trying to drown out the truth. Lucas looked into her eyes. "I should have told you," he said softly. "I was trying to protect your peace, but in doing that, I became part of the silence you deserved to break." Tears welled in her eyes, but didn't fall. She looked down at both bracelets, one on her wrist, one in her hand, the one she wore as armor, and the one she lost when she was most vulnerable. 2 versions of herself, 2 men connected to both. "I need air," she whispered. Lucas didn't follow. Jonas didn't move. She rolled out of the ballroom alone, She found herself in the back garden, under the soft twinkle of string lights. The air smelled of jasmine and city dust, and then, after a few minutes, footsteps. Lucas. He sat on the low garden wall near her, careful not to get too close. I should have said something sooner. She didn't answer. I hated him for what he did, Lucas added, but when he showed me that bracelet, I saw the fear in his face. Not guilt, fear of what he'd thrown away. Why did you help him? Lucas stared at the sky. Because I knew what it was like to fail someone I cared about. She looked at him finally. Who? He hesitated. Then, my mother. Nora blinked. She started the Mobility Foundation, but she died before she saw it launch. I was too busy in mergers, flying to Tokyo, building a name. She asked me to help her once, and I said I'd do it later. He swallowed hard. She passed that night. Stroke. I was on a plane. Silence. I didn't go to the funeral, he added. I worked instead. Nora's breath hitched. I built everything to outrun that moment, Lucas said, until the day I met a young woman in a quiet wheelchair who made me slow down. She looked at him. Then, gently, you didn't fail her. You're honoring her. Every day. His throat tightened. She reached over, slowly, and placed the original bracelet in his palm. She would have liked you, she whispered. But she would have warned you not to waste your second chance. Their eyes locked. Lucas leaned forward slightly. Then let me ask. But before the sentence could finish, a soft voice interrupted. Mr. Hale, Miss Bennett. They turned. It was Agatha Lynn, board chair. Elegant, commanding. She held a tablet in her hand. They're airing Camille's live interview, she said softly. She just said something that could affect both your futures. Nora stood, or rather, lifted her shoulders as if she were standing. Lucas looked at her. Do you want to go back in? She looked toward the ballroom, then toward him, and nodded. But her next words weren't about Camille, or the board, or the press. They were about him. She said quietly, Ask me again, when we're both ready. And he smiled. The ballroom lights flickered as the giant screen behind the stage came to life. All chatter dropped into silence. On screen, Camille Evers, seated in a sleek white chair on a glossy talk show set. Her expression was poised, sympathetic, her tone sugar-laced venom. I do think Lucas is compassionate, she was saying. Always has been. I mean, to take someone like Nora Bennett under his wing, someone with such limited opportunity, it's admirable, really. The crowd shifted. Lucas's fingers curled into a fist. Nora sat motionless beside him, eyes fixed on the screen. Of course, Camille added with a delicate shrug. I suppose when you're someone like Lucas, you can afford to rescue people, even if that charity turns into something more. She smiled. And who wouldn't fall for their knight in shining armor? Someone behind them gasped softly. Then the screen cut to black. A beat of silence, then murmurs. Buzzing, flashing lights from cell phones. The oxygen seemed to drain from the room, and then Nora wheeled forward. No announcement, no fanfare, just her. Alone. She rolled up the small steps to the stage. Someone moved instinctively to help, but she waved them off, firm, graceful. The microphone waited. And so did the world. Nora adjusted her collar. Her fingers touched the brooch at her heart, then the bracelet on her wrist. She took a breath and spoke. I didn't come here tonight to be a symbol, or a scandal, or someone else's storyline. I came as myself. The room went still. Camille called me limited. But limitation has nothing to do with legs or titles. It has to do with vision. And I've never seen more clearly in my life than I do now. A murmur, a shifting of weight. Even the catering staff paused mid-service. What Camille calls rescue, I call respect. What she calls charity, I call choice. I chose to come here tonight. I chose to wear this brooch, not because it was given to me, but because it reminds me of what I've become, someone who stopped asking to be seen and started showing up. Her voice cracked slightly, but her chin stayed high. I didn't fall in love with a rescuer. I saw a man who knew how to show up when no one else did, and stay. Now the silence was electric. I'm not a side project, I'm not an exception, I'm not a pity case, I'm Nora Bennett, and if that name threatens your status, maybe your status was never real to begin with. A pause, then the first sound. Someone clapped, another joined, and then the whole room, thunderous, not polite applause. Not pity, respect. Nora wheeled off stage with grace. The light stayed on her until the last second. Lucas met her at the edge of the crowd. He didn't say anything, just reached out and gently touched the back of her hand. She squeezed his fingers once. Then Agatha Lynn appeared beside them. "Nora," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "you just did more for this company's image in 5 minutes than we've done in 5 years." Nora arched a brow. "Is that a thank you?" Agatha smiled. "It's a job offer." Nora blinked. "Wait, what?" "VP of Internal Affairs," Agatha said. "Full-time. Oversight of diversity, ethics, and communications. You'd build your own team. Board access. Full vote." Lucas stepped back, letting it be her moment. Nora's voice was calm. "I'll think about it," Agatha nodded. "Good answer." Later, in the quiet of the balcony, the sounds of the gala softened to murmurs and string music. Lucas stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Nora leaned forward slightly, letting the breeze lift the loose strands of her hair. "I wasn't going to come tonight," she said quietly. "I know. But I'm glad I did." He turned to her. "So am I." She looked at him, then down at the bracelet again, both of them now on one wrist. Old and new, past and present. "Lucas." "Yeah? You've seen all my broken pieces." "I've never seen you as broken," he said instantly. She smiled, a little sad, a little awed. "I still don't know what comes next." "You don't have to," he replied. "You only need to know I'm here. If you want me." She reached over, took his hand, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. But just as he leaned in, soft, close, not rushing, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out slowly. Another message. From Jonas. "You're incredible, truly. But there's one more thing you deserve to know. About your mother's scholarship application. Lucas knew about it before your accident. He was supposed to sign it. I think that's why he never told you." Nora's heart stopped. She turned to Lucas. He was already watching her. And suddenly the silence between them wasn't comforting anymore. "Is it true?" she asked. Lucas didn't answer right away. The city sparkled behind them, lights on the river, wind curling softly through the balcony railings. But Nora didn't feel the cold. She only felt the weight of his silence. "Lucas," she asked again, more quietly now, "is it true?" He closed his eyes, then nodded. "Yes." The truth landed like a slow wave. She looked down at her hands, both bracelets now glinting in the moonlight. "You knew about the dance scholarship," he exhaled. "I did." "And you didn't sign it." He looked at her fully now. "No, I didn't." The silence between them didn't crack. It held. Not because she was calm, but because she had learned how to stay standing without noise. "I don't want excuses," she said. "You won't get any." She waited, and then gently he gave her the truth. "I didn't sign it out because I was selfish. I was scared you'd leave, and I told myself you weren't ready, that it was a risk, that maybe you'd get hurt." He paused. "But the truth is, I couldn't handle the idea of you succeeding without me. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was only protecting my place in your life." She closed her eyes. That was the kind of honesty she hadn't expected, not from a man like him. "I never got to make that choice," she said. "I know. I would have gone. I know. I might have come back. His breath hitched. She looked at him again. But we'll never know, because you made that decision for me. Lucas nodded, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. She let that sit, and then she took off the original bracelet, the one from the velvet pouch, and placed it in his palm. I want you to keep this. His eyes widened. Nora, you need to remember, she said softly, what it costs to steal someone's choice, even if you love them. She placed her hand over his, closing his fingers around it. But this one, she added, raising her wrist with the second bracelet, the one she'd worn through everything. This one stays with me, because this version of me was built on my own terms. Tears welled in his eyes, but didn't fall. Then she did something he didn't expect. She reached into her collar and unpinned the silver brooch, held it between them. You gave me this when I felt small, she said, but I'm not small anymore. He didn't move. She stepped, rolled just a little closer. I don't need you to rescue me, Lucas. I know. I don't need you to prove anything. I know. She looked up at him. But I want you, she said, and I forgive you. He blinked, the tears breaking through, and then, finally, he bent forward, not like a savior, not like a prince, like a man falling gently into the arms of someone stronger than she looks. Their lips met, soft, warm, no pressure, just truth. When they broke apart, she was smiling, a real full smile. So, she said lightly, about that job offer. He laughed. Still thinking about it, she grinned. No, I already emailed Agatha with my terms. And? She accepted. He blinked. That fast? She shrugged. Turns out a public mic drop carries weight. 2 weeks later, the foundation released a new scholarship in honor of Lucas's mother, the Grace Hale Mobility Grant, for students pursuing careers in the arts and business. Nora was named director of the program. She kept the brooch in her office, pinned to a framed photo, her mother in pointe shoes, arms in the air like she was holding up the sky. And one morning, on her way to meet Lucas for coffee, she passed a small girl in a pink wheelchair outside the building. The girl stared. Nora stopped. Hi, she said, smiling. The girl beamed. You're the lady from the video. Nora knelt slightly, meeting her eyes. I'm Nora, she said. And you? Eva, the girl said shyly. That's a strong name. The girl's mom watched from a distance, teary-eyed. Nora touched her brooch, then handed it to the little girl. Here, she said, this belonged to someone who believed people like us could fly. Eva held it like treasure. Nora winked. I think it's your turn. That night on the rooftop, Lucas poured them both a glass of wine. The city lights danced below. The stars blinked their approval. Nora leaned back in her chair, legs tucked, heart full. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. She raised hers. To old truths. They clinked. And just before the scene faded, she looked at him, eyes glowing, voice warm. Funny, isn't it? She whispered. Sometimes the story that nearly broke you ends up being the one that sets you free. The end. Nora didn't just find love. She found her voice, her power, her name, and a life that fits her, not anyone else's design. How about you? What would you have done in Nora's place? Would you have forgiven Lucas or chosen a different path? Comment below. Give this story a rating from 0 to 10, and if it moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more beautiful stories. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.